Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Monuments in Stasis, out April 15th on Century Media Records. The album has 10 tracks, 50 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4th full-length studio album. They are a UK progressive metalcore band. As far as the design goes, there's not much to say. This album feels very straightforward. It's an album that has great movement that progresses really well. It doesn't move in a linear way, it's very dynamic, and each song has unique characteristics that allow them to break from the pack and have a sense of individuality. But at the same time, you still feel like you're listening to Monuments. The DNA of the band is alive and well, and that's what glues the whole record together. You're just never really sure what side of Monuments you're going to get on a track-by-track basis. Now, as far as the soundscape is concerned, you have to look at the two main driving forces, the progressive side and the metalcore side. On the metalcore side, I feel like the album is more straightforward. It doesn't hold back. It just brings aggression and brings intensity, it brings heaviness, and it takes you along for the ride. And it's a ride that's easy to understand, easy to process, easy to digest, easy to connect with. On the progressive side, the album has definitely a lot more depth, a lot more substance, a lot more texture, making it a little bit more intricate and allowing the album to go in a very different avenue. Now, how you put these pockets of progressive sound or progressive elements into the overall metalcore experience, that's the winning formula for this record, because it makes the overall experience a lot simpler. You don't feel like you have to pause within a song in order to process one specific part of the track different from how you were perceiving the track or processing the track up until that point. Everything is kind of blended in as one, so you almost don't really realize how you're moving from one end of the spectrum to the other as you're moving down the line, as you're going through these songs. They have this seamless way of blending both styles and allowing the overall perception of the record to be one that's always taking you forward, never really pulling you laterally. This makes the album feel bigger without necessarily creating heaviness that weighs down the record. You can have an album with big sound without necessarily having thickness to that sound, and that's exactly how this record comes across. It has a starting point, but it doesn't have a finish one. The sound expands. When you listen to this record, the sound is just growing, moving. You can feel it moving along, but you don't see where it ends. There's no walls, there's no bounce back, so it just kind of dissipates in the distance. This makes the overall playability of the album increase. It makes the overall fluidity of the album increase. It makes the album more engaging. It makes the album more entertaining. It increases the quality of the experience, the quality of the atmosphere, and the quality of the sound itself. The way they merge these two worlds on this album is really the winning formula on how you can move forward and allowing the listener to always feel connected with the record regardless of where the songs are taking you. Now, within this sound experience, you have to talk about the guitars and perhaps the samples. I like the fact that neither one of these follows any patterns. This is not a record of patterns. They didn't find a formula and then use that same formula song in and song out. So I like the fact that they use things sporadically throughout the record. They try different elements, they try different things, different textures, different ways of constructing songs, always keeping in mind what the goal was, but not necessarily conditioning themselves to follow just one single route. And that is an important aspect of the record. And you see it in the samples, you see it in the guitars. The guitar sound throughout on this record is phenomenal. It doesn't matter if you're looking at the more linear, the more straightforward approach on the metalcore side, or if you're looking at the more elaborate, the more textured sound that you get on the progressive side. On both ends of the spectrum, the guitar sound is phenomenal, and it's definitely one of the calling cards of this record. The other calling card is definitely the vocals. This is Andy's first record with the band, and he delivered a phenomenal performance. He has great range, great tone, and I really feel like his clean vocals work extremely well for the more melodic and the more progressive side of Monuments. He just has the right delivery and the tone to go with that delivery to enhance the texture, to enhance the substance, to enhance the overall beauty and the parameters that the progressive and melodic side of Monuments puts forward on this album. The harsh vocals really take you straight to the point, and when the songs need to be heavy, when the songs are going more straight to that direct approach of just heaviness, aggression, and intensity, he also delivers on that end. He has the same intensity to match the music behind it. So I really felt like his vocals with the guitars are definitely the 2 points that you're going to walk away from this album talking about, because they just feel right at every single turn on every single track. Now, I hate to use this expression, but this is definitely their more mature album. When I look at previous records, I always felt like Monuments was a band that tried to throw so many things at the wall, hoping that some of them would stick. On this album, I felt like there was more of a purpose, there was more of a goal. They had something in mind in terms of what they wanted to achieve, and that was all about just putting together the right pieces in order for that goal to come to fruition. And that's how this album comes across. It's an album that has a sense of purpose. Extremely important, something that I didn't see before from Monuments, but it's definitely a clear element that jumps out the moment that you listen to this record. You honestly don't have to go through the album multiple times to figure it out that this album has a different drive to it. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Opiate. Great intro. It has a little bit of an electronic underline to it, and that electronic underline stays throughout the rest of the track, but just really simmers underneath as a layer underneath everything else. It builds the guitar sound on top. You have the clean vocals with some layers behind it coming on and off, allowing them to feel like they are also expanding and contracting, so there's movement, not just musically, but also vocally without having to do too much to the vocals themselves. It sets up the intensity for sound and vocals afterwards, because this is a track that brings you down, the mood brings you down musically and vocally, and then it brings you back up again with intensity, with aggression, with heaviness, and you're never really sure where you're going next. Is the more melodic side always going to be followed by a more aggressive side, or is the aggressive side going to be followed by another aggressive side? It's a song that keeps you guessing all the time, and because it keeps you guessing, it keeps you moving, it becomes very entertaining, it becomes very engaging, very dynamic on both ends of the spectrum, on the sound side and on the vocal side. It just feels like it has a lot of energy and never loses that energy across any single portion of the track. You're always engaged with this song from start to finish. Next, you have Collapse, heavy from the start. This track doesn't hold back from the get-go. It's musically heavy, it's vocally heavy, it moves in a very linear fashion. It doesn't have the same ebbs and flows as the previous track Opiate had. This one feels a little bit more straight to the point. It has undertones, it has heaviness, and then it has undertones of heaviness underneath the heaviness. There's just a lot to process. It's a thick track, but it's a thick track that moves in a very straightforward way, so it makes the overall experience feel robust, but at the same time linear, so it makes the processing of the track slightly easier to grasp, even if you have to peel those layers off. It has the heaviness that controls the experience, even though there are some more melodic moments within the track. But when you get to the end of the song, the melodic moments or the more softer moments of the track almost become forgotten. The heaviness is what surpasses everything, and that's going to be what you're going to walk away from this song remembering. Last but not least, Somnus. Sonic, engaging track from start to finish. Vocally, I felt like this track needed some definition, and the vocals really helped to create that definition. The vocals help define the overall track in terms of how you feel towards it, in terms of how you will process it. It morphs from one to the other. It's a song that has different approaches, but it never really stays stagnant. It always feels like it's growing, morphing, adding something, evolving, and becoming something different from what it was before. It also gets thicker with sound. The sound seems to get bigger and bigger as it moves along. It has great atmosphere, it has great energy, it moves really well, it's really well put together. It's a song that has a lot of different facets, a song that brings in perhaps different pieces that you're going to find in a more predominant role in other songs throughout the entire album. This one almost becomes a little bit of a synopsis of what the entire record has in store for you, sonically and vocally. This is it, Monuments with In Stasis, out April 15th on Century Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.